Let me ask you something simple. What built the modern world? Not money, not ideas, not even electricity. Steel. Every bridge you've driven across, every skyscraper you've looked up at, every car you've sat in, the frame of the phone you're probably holding right now, all of it starts with steel. And for over a century, the countries that dominated steel production also dominated everything that came from it. Military power, industrial output, economic leverage. America had it, Germany had it, Britain had it. Then, quietly, and faster than almost anyone predicted, that dominance shifted. Here is a number I want you to sit with for a second. 960 million metric tons. That is how much steel China produced in a single year, 2025. The entire United States made roughly 80 million tons that same year. China's number was more than 12 times that. One single Chinese company, Baowu Steel, by itself produces more steel annually than every American mill combined. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Big numbers, but who cares? Producing a lot of something doesn't mean you're producing the best version of it. And you'd normally be right, but here's the thing that changes this story entirely. China isn't just making more steel than anyone else. They are making a fundamentally different kind of steel, one that most Western mills are physically incapable of producing right now. And the distance between what they can make and what everyone else can make is not shrinking, it is growing. So let's start with what steel actually is. Most of us picture the same thing: thick, gray, heavy, tough, simple. But steel is not one thing. It's an entire family of materials, and the differences between members of that family are enormous. Think about bread. Basic white sandwich bread and proper sourdough are both technically bread, but one you can throw together in 40 minutes. The other takes 3 days, needs a specific live culture, controlled fermentation, and a completely different chemical process. They look similar on the outside. Inside, they are completely different products. Traditional steel is the sandwich bread. Works fine, does the job. What China has been developing, and has now started producing at massive scale, is the sourdough. Specifically, something called third-generation advanced high-strength steel. For decades, steel manufacturers faced a fundamental trade-off. Hard steel is strong, but brittle. Try to bend it into a complex, curved shape and it cracks. Soft steel bends fine but loses strength. Engineers constantly had to compromise. Third-generation advanced high-strength steel eliminates that trade-off entirely. It is both extraordinarily strong and flexible enough to be stamped into complex shapes without cracking. By engineering what's happening inside the metal at the microscopic level, controlling the tiny crystalline structures within the material to produce properties that seemed contradictory a decade ago. And here's the commercially explosive detail. You don't need to rebuild your factory to use it. It runs on standard stamping equipment. You just need access to the material. Right now, China has that in abundance. The rest of the world, mostly, does not. Let's talk about what this means in the real world. Volkswagen switched to this new class of steel on one of their EV platforms and reduced the vehicle's structural frame weight by 27%. Not the whole car, just the skeleton, 27% lighter. That directly translates to better range on a single charge, which is currently one of the biggest barriers to EV adoption globally. Hyundai and Kia used a version of this steel in their floor panels and cut weight there by 30%. Think about the scale of that. Every major automaker on the planet is racing to produce lighter, safer, more efficient vehicles. Every kilogram you remove adds range, improves safety, and reduces material costs. Advanced high-strength steel is one of the most cost-effective tools available to do exactly that. It's cheaper than carbon fiber, it's significantly lighter than conventional steel. It works on existing production lines. And in 2025, Chinese advanced high-strength steel was arriving at buyers' doors 15 to 20% cheaper than comparable material from European or North American producers. That's not a minor price difference absorbed by margins. That's a gap wide enough to change procurement decisions at factories across Germany, the United States, Mexico, and South Korea. This is also not limited to cars. Construction, wind turbines, energy infrastructure, defense, everywhere that strength and weight are in tension, which is almost everywhere in modern manufacturing, this new class of steel wins. And China can produce it at industrial scale. Most of the West cannot. So why don't Western steel companies just build the capacity to compete? The answer is a mix of economics, history, and one number that stops conversations cold: $300 million. That's the minimum cost to build a single advanced high-strength steel production line. Not a full facility, one line. And when you come out the other side of that spending, you're competing against Chinese mills with a years-long head start, lower cost structures, and the ability to undercut your price by 40% before you've shipped your first coil. Most major steel facilities in the United States and Europe were built in the 1970s and 1980s, running on blast furnaces designed for a different era. Retrofitting them isn't a software update. It's closer to converting a freight locomotive into a Formula One car while it's still hauling cargo. Financial analysis found that Western mills face a 35 to 45% cost disadvantage per ton compared to Chinese producers, not because of workforce skill or engineering talent, but because aging infrastructure creates costs you cannot compete away without tearing things down and starting over. By 2025, U.S. Steel, ArcelorMittal, and ThyssenKrupp had all flagged delays in their high-strength steel expansion plans. One executive, speaking without attribution, put it plainly: the market was there, the technology was understood, but no private investor wanted to be first to spend $300 million on a production line that Chinese mills could make unprofitable before it shipped its first coil. Private capital follows returns. This kind of problem doesn't get solved by the market. It gets solved by governments, or it doesn't get solved at all. Which brings us to what China's government is actually doing. In September 2025, China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology released a national roadmap for the steel industry, a detailed, multi-year plan for producing not just more steel, but better steel, cleaner steel, and strategically dominant steel. The investment behind that plan is estimated at around $18 billion through 2030. Over $8 billion is flowing into hydrogen-based steelmaking, replacing coal with hydrogen that produces water instead of carbon dioxide, and creates iron particularly well-suited for the electric arc furnaces needed for high-strength specialty grades. Another $5 billion is expanding electric arc furnace capacity, with a goal of doubling output to 150 million tons annually by 2030. The rest goes into regional hydrogen infrastructure, research partnerships, and building the next generation of metallurgists inside China. Here's the strategic layer underneath all of this. The European Union is rolling out a carbon border adjustment mechanism starting in 2026, placing a carbon cost on imported goods, including steel, based on the emissions generated to produce them. If you made your steel burning coal, you pay a tariff to enter European markets. If you made it with hydrogen or clean electricity, you pay very little. China's $18 billion plan isn't just about producing better steel. It's about ensuring that when those carbon tariffs activate, Chinese steel qualifies for low-tariff access to European markets, while Western mills burning coal face carbon costs at home. That's not reactive policy, that's preparation. But even if a Western company decided tomorrow to build a world-class facility, there's a supply chain problem sitting underneath the technology problem that almost never makes the news. Third-generation high-strength steel requires precise amounts of specific alloying elements, vanadium, manganese, and niobium, blended to engineer those microscopic internal structures. China dominates the global processing capacity for all three. That means even a new, state-of-the-art Western steel plant would likely need to source key inputs from Chinese refiners to operate. And on top of the minerals gap, there's a knowledge gap. Patent filings in advanced high-strength steel chemistry and hydrogen-based metallurgy tell a clear story. China has dramatically increased its share of global patents in these fields over the past decade. When you hold the patents, you don't just have legal protection, you control the most efficient methods for making a technology. The gap between China and the rest of the world here is not just a machine gap or a money gap. It's a knowledge gap, built over years, embedded in institutional expertise, and not available on any shelf. If nothing changes by 2030, major manufacturing sectors face a reality where the most critical input material for building modern vehicles, structures, and equipment flows through supply chains that sit outside Western control. For automakers, that means paying more for material before a single car leaves the factory floor. For defense manufacturers, the stakes are higher. Military vehicles, aircraft components, and naval systems increasingly depend on high-performance steel grades. A supply chain running through a single geography, one that is also a strategic rival, is a vulnerability in a way that cheap consumer goods never were. Western governments are beginning to respond, but the scale of that support remains a fraction of what China has already deployed. And time is not neutral. Every year without serious investment is another year of Chinese producers extending their lead, deepening their patent portfolios, and locking in supply relationships worldwide. China didn't stumble into this position. It chose it, invested in it, and executed on it deliberately over many years. That's a lesson in industrial strategy worth understanding regardless of where you live or what you think about global trade. The rules of manufacturing aren't fixed. They're written in capital, in research budgets, and in decisions made today about what the world will need 2 decades from now. Right now, one country is writing those rules faster than anyone else. The question is whether others wake up to that fast enough to matter.